By day 3, you've accepted the rhythm of ranch life, or at least Apollo's version of it, which somehow involves daily poetry readings to the herd, strict sun salutations before milking, which no one actually performs except for Apollo, and mandatory silence during what he calls golden hour reflection. The cows mostly nap through it. This morning, you find Apollo standing atop a rock, eyes closed, arms lifted like he's about to conduct a thunderstorm. You clear your throat gently. Are we summoning weather? He opens one eye. Number, I'm centering my herd energy. You nod slowly. And, how's that going? The cows are emotionally guarded, he says, as if that's a real wrenching concern. They haven't accepted me as their light bringer. You look over at the cows, who are chewing grass and blinking peacefully. One has a flower crown. Another is asleep with its tongue sticking out. They seem about as centered as livestock can be. Hermes arrives, trailing a banner behind him that reads, Temple of Bovine Harmony. Guided tours available. You don't ask. You've learned not to. Apollo points at it with a look of disbelief. That was not approved. Hermes shrugs. It's organic, just like the milk I'm bottling. He pulls a small clay jug from his satchel. Try it. Notes of thyme, wild honey, and mild resentment. You sip. It's disturbingly good. Hermes has somehow built an entire micro-business, while Apollo is still trying to win over a dozen cows emotionally. You suspect this has always been his plan. Historians still argue whether Hermes milk brand ever reached full cult status, but there are fragments of amphorae labeled Hermilcos unearthed in Corinth, suggesting at least regional distribution. Apollo eventually confiscates the banner, muttering something about divine dignity and unauthorized use of laurel leaves. The morning is spent with Apollo composing what he calls a cow anthem, which he insists you help him perform in 3-part harmony. You have no formal training, neither do the cows. One hits the wrong note and accidentally kicks over the watering trough. Hermes is off to the side, carving tiny winged helmets for a batch of mice he claims are in training to be tiny but fierce postal couriers. It's a lot. Later, while Apollo is giving a lecture on pastoral symbolism in early Olympian society, to Hermes sidles up beside you, eyes glittering. Want to see something fun? You sigh. Do I? He pulls you behind a thicket of oleander and gestures downward. There, etched into the dirt, is a diagram. A very elaborate diagram. What is this? My business model, Hermes says. See, here's the delivery system, here's the merchandise expansion, here's my ambrosia-scented cow balm product line, here's where I pitch to Artemis for brand synergy. You stare at the complex doodles. You made a franchise. Technically a mythopreneurial network, he says. Patent pending. You rub your temples. Apollo's going to flip. Hermes shrugs. He's a sun god. He flips over everything. Meanwhile, Apollo is still singing softly to a cow named Melia. She does not look impressed. As you return to the clearing, you notice a figure watching from the trees, tall, veiled, silent. Apollo stops mid-verse. Who goes there? The figure steps forward. It's a woman draped in deep blue, skin like river stone, eyes full of shadow. You feel the air shift. Even Hermes goes quiet. It's Hestia, goddess of the hearth, quietest of the Olympians, hardly ever leaves her firelit temples, and yet here she is, among cows. Apollo lowers his voice. Lady Hestia. She raises a hand. I came to see what all the mooing was about. You almost laugh. Almost. Apollo recovers quickly, straightens his posture. We're establishing a model of divine pastoral care. Very holistic. She walks to a cow and strokes its forehead. They seem calm, she says. Herds are sacred, you know. Not flashy, not loud, but necessary. Like flame. Her presence is grounding. Everything stills. Even Hermes sets down his stylus. You realize this is what Apollo's been chasing. Not fanfare, not applause, just presence. That silent peace that comes from care, consistency, and not being turned into a weasel. Hestia looks to Apollo. You should let them lead you sometimes. Cows don't need songs, they need space. Apollo nods slowly. She turns to go. disappearing as quietly as she came. You stand there in the silence she left behind, surrounded by sunlit fur and fluttering olive leaves, and for once, no one speaks. Later that night, as stars scatter across the sky like spilled sugar, you and Apollo sit beside the herd in companionable quiet. You think she was right? He asks. You nod. Mostly. He chuckles. I think I'll try listening more. Across the paddock, Hermes is teaching the cows how to step over ropes for an upcoming Olympic grazing showcase. One nearly faceplants. Hermes claps. You sigh and hand Apollo a fig. Tomorrow's going to be weird, isn't it? He grins. Definitely. The next morning, Apollo actually listens to Hestia's advice. He forgoes the usual lyre concert, skips the sun-themed motivational chant, and instead just walks among the herding silence, palms open, eyes soft. You'd almost think he's changed. Almost. Then you spot the gilded clipboard he's carrying, titled Cow Emotional Journey Log, Baby Steps. The cows, of course, do not particularly notice the change in management style. They continue chewing, swishing their tails, and occasionally licking one another's ears in a lazy sort of communion. One even nuzzles Apollo's elbow, which sends him into raptures. You see that? He whispers urgently. Connection. That's real bovine intimacy. You try not to laugh. She's licking the salt off your skin. Exactly, he beams. You are mid-snack when Hermes returns with a parade. Not of animals, of people. You blink. Behind him marches an absurd procession. Two bored-looking mortals carrying barrels, a satyr pushing a squeaky cart, a man in a toga juggling amphorae badly, and a chorus of small children wearing cow masks. Why you sputter? Hermes tosses a flower crown on your head. Welcome to the grand opening of Hermes Ranch Tours. Apollo walks over slowly, very slowly. Explain, he says in a voice that suggests thunderclouds may be forming behind his eyes. Hermes spreads his arms. I have monetized the divine bovine experience. Premium package includes cow petting, milk tasting, and a dramatic reading of The Odyssey for Kids, featuring puppets. A small puppet Odysseus is already fighting a sock-shaped cyclops in the background. You pinch the bridge of your nose. Historians still argue whether the puppet show was historically accurate. Spoiler. No, but clay figurines discovered in Bolsha do show a cow-worshipping troupe called the Muses, which has Hermes' fingerprints all over it, literally. Apollo closes his eyes and mutters, I came here to build a sanctuary of peace. Hermes, utterly unbothered, lifts the child onto a cow's back and shouts, we call this one Buttercup. She's sacred and also very soft. Buttercup moves gently, clearly, unfazed. The tours begin in earnest. Visitors are fed sweet bread and diluted nectar. Someone sets up a lyre booth. There's a raffle for Cow of the Week. And then, in the midst of this chaos, comes the inspection. Two stern-looking goddesses glide into the field. Demeter, in all her grain-scented glory, and Athena, gleaming like a bronze statue with zero tolerance for nonsense. They're not smiling. Apollo visibly panics. We're not open for divine audit. Demeter raises a brow. You're raising cows on sacred soil. You think we wouldn't notice? Athena eyes a banner that reads, Milk is wisdom, buy it now. Her voice turns to steel. Who authorized this slogan? Hermes raises a finger. Technically, cows are wise. Look at their eyes. Infinite knowledge. She does not laugh. You do, but only internally. Apollo rushes over with a scroll. We're establishing a spiritually balanced model of interspecies cooperation, rooted in mythopoetic mindfulness. Athena cuts him off. You're running a petting zoo with theme songs. Hey, Hermes says, they're award-winning songs. Well, they will be, once I invent the award. Demeter inspects a patch of grass. This clover isn't enchanted. You're feeding them mundane forage? Apollo stammers, they prefer it. Simplicity is sacred. Athena crosses her arms. Then perhaps your operation should be simplified. The implication is clear. They're shutting this thing down. But then, from somewhere near the sycamore trees, a small mortal child pipes up. Miss Goddess Lady, I learned cows have 4 stomachs today. Everyone pauses. Even the wind seems to hush. The child holds out a drawing of Buttercup labeled Sacred Cow, 4 whole tummies. Demeter looks down. Her gaze softens. 4 is a lucky number, she murmurs. Stability, wholeness. Athena still looks skeptical. The child continues. And this one? She licked my elbow. Apollo grins like a proud uncle. Salt-based affection. There's a long pause. Then Demeter sighs. Fine. Keep the cows, but no more puppets. Hermes deflates a little. Not even the Odysseus in a toga? Especially not that one. Athena snaps. You breathe a small sigh of relief. Crisis averted. For now, as the sun dips low, the day fades into one of those oddly calm evenings, the kind where even the most absurd day somehow softens into golden peace. Apollo plays a soft tune as the cows settle in for the night. One of them gently headbutts Hermes, who smiles and pets it like he's been blessed. You lie back in the grass, the stars beginning to poke through the purple sky. It occurs to you that this might be the only ranch in existence that survived divine scrutiny by sheer force of cow-themed child art. Somewhere in the distance, the sock Cyclops gets quietly eaten by a goat. You close your eyes and let the absurdity wash over you. Just another day on Mount Olympus. Morning again. You're starting to lose track of how many sunrises you've watched with a mouthful of hay and the bleary stare of someone who's witnessed gods argue over utter hygiene. Apollo's in a good mood. He's declared today Cow Enrichment Day, which apparently involves storytelling circles, lavender hoof soaks, and something he calls empathic moo mirroring. You've stopped asking questions, mostly. Hermes, for his part, is still scheming. He's wearing a toga made entirely of cow-printed fabric and is marketing it as pastoral couture. You sip diluted ambrosia and brace for impact. The herd, meanwhile, is thriving. Even the surliest bull who everyone calls Grumblehoof has mellowed. He now tolerates the lyre music and occasionally hums along in what might be bovine approval. Or gasp. Today's main event, however, is something new. Milking. Actual, proper milking. Apollo has read 7 papyrus scrolls on the subject and claims to be fully certified by the goddess of agricultural vibes, whatever that means. You approach the milking area, which looks more like a spa. Warm stone stools, soft harp music, even a little incense wafting through the air. This, Apollo proclaims, is a sacred exchange of nourishment and mutual respect. Hermes snorts. Is squirting cow juice into a bowl, sunshine. Apollo glares at him but chooses peace. For now. You take your seat beside a cow named Mubel. She seems calm, maybe even a little smug. She's clearly been milked before. Now here's where things get surprisingly educational. Historians confirm that in Bronze Age Greece, while cattle were kept mainly for plowing and ritual sacrifice, there's evidence that early rural communities practiced limited dairying. Clay vessels with milk residue have been found in Thessaly, though scholars still debate whether it was mostly goat-based or bovine. Some even argue that certain temples stored milk as an offering to fertility goddesses. Back in the present, you try milking for the first time, and it's harder than it looks. You get more on your toga than in the bowl. Apollo leans over. Think of it as a duet, a sacred duet of rhythm and flow. Hermes helpfully sprays milk in your direction. Is this part of the duet? You glare, but he's already skipping away, shouting something about marketing a divine cheese line called Apollo's Mozzarella of Radiance. You've barely wiped the milk off your elbow when the cows begin acting weird. Mubel lets out a sharp moo. Buttercup stomps. Grumblehoof snorts so hard he kicks over a stool. Something's wrong. Hermes pauses mid-selfie. Is this a stampede? Apollo looks concerned. They're agitated, sensing something. You peer over the hill and then you see them, a herd of wild cows. Massive, untamed, with shaggy manes and glinting eyes. They move like a cloud of muscle and confusion, and they're heading straight for you. Well, Hermes says, backing up, this'll be fun. The domesticated cows begin bellowing in distress. The wild ones bellow right back. It's a bovine shouting match across the field. Apollo raises his hand. Everyone, stay calm. I will commune with them. I speak cow now. You definitely do not, you mutter. But he's already striding into the field. And somehow, the wild cows pause. They seem confused by the glittering, golden god in a toga whispering calming mantras. It is very much a tense standoff. One enormous wild cow, whom Hermes instantly dubs Mutilda the Menace, steps forward and sniffs Apollo. There's a long silence. Then she headbutts him square in the chest and knocks him 10 feet backward. You gasp. Hermes bursts into laughter. Apollo groans from the dirt. Okay, he wheezes. She doesn't want to meditate. The herds begin to merge curious, sniffing, snorting, and occasional mood-based arguments. It's chaos, but weirdly polite chaos. Historians still argue whether domesticated cows in the ancient world could reintegrate with wild herds, or whether the reverse ever happened. Some records suggest entire herds went feral after temple collapses, especially in war-torn regions. And there are cryptic inscriptions from Epirus that reference the return of the thunder cows, though whether that's metaphor or not is anyone's guess. Back in the field, Apollo rallies. He climbs onto a rock, bruised but not broken, and sings a lullaby. And it works. Somehow. His voice, golden and warm, flows across the meadow. The wild cows tilt their heads. The domesticated ones come down. Even Mutilda seems mildly impressed. The herds begin mingling more peacefully. Buttercup and the shaggy wildling do a sort of slow circle dance, which Hermes narrates like a sports commentator. You exhale slowly. Crisis may be averted. Later, as the sun dips low, you all sit around the fire pit. Cows form an outer ring, lazily chewing cud like they're watching a play. Apollo stirs the embers. We were almost trampled by sacred beasts.
Hermes raises a jug of fermented fig nectar. And now we have double the herd. You're welcome. You glance at the mass of cows now dozing peacefully. They've formed subgroups already. Domestic, wild, and a third group you think might just be in it for the snacks. Apollo sighs. Maybe I shouldn't have started a cattle ranch. You think? You say, sipping your drink. But he looks out at the grazing silhouettes. It's kind of beautiful, isn't it? It is. In that weird, chaotic, divine mortal farm hybrid way. And as the stars begin to twinkle above, you realize something else. You're actually kind of invested now in the cows, in the ranch, in whatever nonsense tomorrow brings, because here on Olympus, or just beside it, anything can happen. Even peace between wild and tame. Even Apollo learning how to milk without spilling it all over his knees. Maybe. Sleep comes in snippets now. You keep waking to the sound of mooing lullabies and Hermes humming what he claims is the first bovine anthem. The moon's high, the stars are swaying like a mobile above you, and somewhere in the background, a cow is chewing rhythmically beside your head. It's officially past weird, but you're weirdly okay with it. Morning rises slow and golden. A few wild cows are still a little skittish, but most have settled in. They're lounging like regulars at a spa retreat, tails flicking gently, eyes half-lidded. Someone, probably Apollo, has braided flowers into their horns. And you? You wake up to Hermes poking your forehead with a stick. You're the ranch manager now, he says. You sit up. I'm what? Manager, foreman, moo boss. Apollo said something about delegating mortal stewardship. Hermes grins. Also, he's off doing interpretive sun salutations. You groan and pull a blade of hay from your hair. What exactly am I supposed to do? Everything, Hermes says. Feed, clean, organize moo therapy rotations. You get the idea. And so begins your reign. You grab a stylus and a wax tablet and try to make a list. Grazing schedules, water breaks, music rotations, whatever enrichment means when applied to ruminants. It's a blur of hooves and hay. To your surprise, the cows are cooperative, mostly. Buttercup responds well to structure. Grumblehoof, not so much, but he respects boundaries. Moobell, it turns out, is an instigator and has already taught a few wildlings how to fake injuries to skip chores. As you walk the perimeter, clipboard in hand like some divine assistant manager, you hear Apollo's voice drifting over the hill. He's composing a pastoral symphony and insists the cows moo in different keys. You note this under non-urgent concerns. Later during midday grazing, Hermes arrives with a wagon. Pulled by two disgruntled goats, the wagon contains scrolls, bolts of cloth, and what looks like a barrel of honey. "Behold," he announces, "the bovine boutique." You blink. "What?" "I'm launching a lifestyle brand," Hermes says proudly. "Cloaks made from cow-brushed wool, cheese aged to divine standards, and a monthly newsletter." You stifle a yawn. "You're opening a store?" "Not just any store," he says, handing you a scroll. "A subscription box for demigods with exquisite taste." And somehow, this works. Hermes sets up a market stall at the edge of the field. A few dryads wander by. One buys a horn polishing kit. Another picks up a jar of Apollo's lightly sung yogurt. You shake your head. This place defies logic, but the cows seem to love the attention. And Hermes? He's in his element, shouting, "2 for 1 goat hoof scrapers, while supplies last." Somewhere in the background, Apollo floats by with a lyre and a daisy crown, mumbling lyrics about sunbeams and cud. You get a brief moment of peace as you sit beneath an olive tree, eating a piece of cheese that may or may not have been blessed. You take a breath, and then a deep voice booms from above. "Who dares appropriate my herd?" You look up and freeze. Standing there, outlined by divine glow and the unmistakable air of not amused, is Helios, the sun titan himself, and he's glaring at the cows. Apollo scrambles into view, his daisy crown falling askew. "Helios, cousin, you're early. I didn't think you were visiting this epoch." Helios crosses his arms. "Those are my sacred cattle. The ones I keep in Thrinacia. Hermes clears his throat. Technically, these are from the local hills." Helios glares at him. "You crossbred my herd with peasant cows?" Apollo shrinks a little. "We were diversifying the gene pool." You watch, wide-eyed, as one of the wild cows, Mutilda the Menace herself, saunters over and headbutts Helios' shin. He yelps. "Unbelievable," he mutters, rubbing his leg. "You can't help yourself." "I think they like it here." He raises an eyebrow. "Are you in charge?" "Kind of," you say. "I have a clipboard." Helios stares at you for a long moment, then scans the field. Cows lounging in sunbeams, Apollo humming lullabies, Hermes selling hoof exfoliant. His face softens just a little. "Well," he says slowly, "they are glowing, and that one's making a sand painting." "Therapeutic enrichment," you nod, straight-faced. Helios lets out a slow sigh. "Very well, I'll allow this experiment. But if even one of them loses their divine aura..." "They won't," Apollo interrupts. "I'll know," Helios warns, then mounts a sunbeam and vanishes in a blaze of light. There's a long silence. Hermes breaks it. "I'm selling that sunbeam residue. Bottled glory. Limited edition." Apollo sighs. "This is exhausting." You pat him on the shoulder. "You did steal the herd first, and now you're emotionally attached." He doesn't argue. That night, you lie under the stars again, clipboard by your side, the cows snoring softly in a semicircle. Someone's hung wine chimes from the fig tree. You're fairly certain the cows did it themselves. Historians still argue whether Helios' sacred herd was metaphorical, divine, or a narrative device. Some say Homer invented it to warn sailors about divine wrath. Others argue there was a real ritual herd, kept in isolation for temple rites. But the line between myth and management blurs easily in these hills. You roll onto your side and smile. Apollo is learning empathy. Hermes is learning business ethics, maybe. And you? You've accepted your fate. You, dear mortal, are now officially the most overqualified ranch manager in mythological history. And strangely, you don't hate it. You wake up the next morning to the unmistakable sound of Hermes attempting motivational chanting. Okay, cows, let's move with purpose. Grazing starts in 10. You roll over and mutter into your hay pillow, "This isn't what I imagined when I said I wanted a career change." The cows, unfazed, flick their tails and slowly begin their bovine shuffle to the pasture. You follow behind with your trusty clipboard, now covered in to-do lists, hoof inspection charts, and one mysterious sketch of what looks like a cow wearing sunglasses and holding a lyre. Probably Hermes. Apollo, meanwhile, is perched on a rock, eyes closed, attempting something he calls solar synergy alignment. You suspect he just fell asleep sitting up. A flower has landed in his hair. You leave it there. Today's goal: expand the herd's recreational options. Hermes has brought in a new batch of supplies: puzzle feeders, enchanted boulders that move back when pushed, and what appears to be a labyrinth made entirely of woven vines. It's for mental stimulation, he explains, pulling out a parchment titled 10 Ways to Entertain Divine Livestock. You spend the morning assembling what becomes known as Mootopia. The cows respond with varying degrees of interest. Moo Bell charges through the labyrinth in under a minute, claiming dominance, while Grumblehoof stands at the entrance, chewing thoughtfully and refuses to participate on principle. Still, it's progress. You've even started naming the cow cliques. There's the Nap Herd, specialists in synchronized lounging. The Chewers Guild, who seem to derive deep philosophical meaning from cud. And the Moofimus, known for their low, melodramatic mooing and suspiciously good posture. As you oversee the enrichment rotation, Apollo floats over and lands beside you, stretching like a sleepy cat. "I've been thinking," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "Always dangerous." "I want to host a festival," he announces. You blink. "A what?" "A festival of light and moo," he says. "An all-day celebration of the sun, divine cattle, and probably lyres." Hermes immediately appears out of thin air. "I'm in. Can I set up merch tables?" Apollo nods. "Of course. We'll have games, music, even a cow fashion show." You sigh. Deeply. "Fine. But we need to keep it manageable." "Too late," Hermes says. "I already sent invites to the minor deities in 2/3 of Arcadia." You pinch the bridge of your nose. Great. And so the planning begins. You naturally are in charge of logistics. While Apollo writes hymns and Hermes designs limited edition cowbells, hand-etched with divine runes. You organize the route of the processional moo parade, arrange divine snack stations, and set up a rest area for the less enthusiastic participants, namely the cows. Preparations last days. The cows are bathed in olive oil and adorned with floral garlands. Hermes teaches them to spell S-U-N in formation. Moo Bell learns to bow. Grumblehoof sulks. The day arrives, warm and glowing. The meadow hums with anticipation. Nymphs, dryads, demigods, and a few bewildered mortals have gathered, lounging on blankets and sipping something called solar nectar. The festival kicks off with Apollo's grand entrance, a slow descent from the sky on a chariot pulled by golden sheep. He's singing, loudly. Half the audience falls asleep, the rest politely clap. Then comes the main event, the cow parade. You lead it naturally, clipboard in hand, desperately trying to keep formation while Hermes throws divine graze mix into the crowd and shouts, "Who wants enlightenment snacks?" The cows march, moo, bow, and even pause for photos. Buttercup executes a flawless spin. Someone cries, probably a muse. The judges, 3 elderly satyrs and a spectral oracle, declare the parade weirdly moving. The cows win a golden salt lick. Afterward, there's dancing, storytelling, and an impromptu lyre duel between Apollo and a satyr named Kevin. Kevin wins. Apollo pretends not to care. As night falls, the sky turns a soft violet. Lanterns float upward, each carrying a wish or a pun. You lie on the hillside beside Mubel, watching the sky fill with glowing orbs. Not bad for a ranch, you murmur. Mubel moos softly like she agrees. Historians still argue whether the festival of the divine herd ever took place. Some say it's a symbolic retelling of agrarian rituals from early Attic tribes. Others claim it's a later mythological invention designed to explain rural temple rites in honor of Apollo. The vine labyrinth? Some scholars argue it mirrors real rituals used to confuse evil spirits or entertain livestock. You yawn and roll onto your side. The cows are dozing now, worn out from their celebrity treatment. Hermes is snoring under a tablecloth. Apollo is composing a victory ode to Kevin. And you're too tired to even move. A few leftover garlands rest on your chest. One has a hoofprint in it. You close your eyes. If this is what running a divine ranch feels like, you could probably do worse. You awake the next morning to the delicate sound of Apollo humming. Off key. He's circling the barn with a lyre in one hand and a parchment scroll in the other, deep in what he calls the golden afterglow of creative triumph. Hermes, meanwhile, is hanging from the rafters, testing the tensile strength of divine cow hammocks. You're just trying to locate your boots, which appear to have been used as a nesting site by a pair of overly ambitious sparrows. Another day, another crisis, or as you've come to call it, Tuesday. But there's a bigger issue looming. Yesterday's festival was a smash hit. Too much of a hit. Now pilgrims are arriving from across the region. Word has spread of the radiant cows of Apollo, the sun-blessed meadow, and the mysterious mortal who keeps divine bovines in check. That would be you. The influx of visitors brings not just admiration, but expectations. Gifts. Requests for blessings. One woman asked Grumblehoof to judge her upcoming marriage. Grumblehoof snorts and knocks over a basket of grapes. Interpret that as you will. You call an emergency meeting with Apollo and Hermes. Guys, you say, waving a scroll with a growing list of visitor complaints. We need a plan. There are people sleeping in the haylofts. Someone tried to milk Mubel. The cows are getting nervous. Apollo looks thoughtful. What if we built a temple? Hermes perks up. With a gift shop? You sigh. With walls, preferably ones that keep people out. The next few days are a flurry of activity. Apollo decides he wants the temple to be circular, with openings that catch the solstice sun exactly at noon. You suspect he just wants more dramatic entrances. Hermes contracts local nymphs to help, bribing them with ambrosia-flavored ice. You coordinate everything: supplies, workers, architectural compromises. No, Apollo, the altar cannot be made entirely of mirrors. Meanwhile, the cows grow restless. Their meadow feels crowded. The grass is thinning. Mubel begins pacing. Grumblehoof keeps trying to shove people back through the gates. You approach Apollo gently. We need to think long-term. The cows need space, quiet, and I'm running out of hay. He frowns, clearly torn between divine ambition and bovine welfare. To his credit, he listens. A plan is formed. The temple will be built at the edge of the meadow near a natural spring. It will serve as a shrine, a sanctuary, and a barrier. The inner grounds will remain cow-only territory. You spend your days overseeing construction and your nights coaxing the cows back into their routines. You introduce grazing rotations, establish a cow lounge area, and, after Mubel nearly steps on a harpist, designate a no poetry zone. Through it all, Hermes finds time to design cow-themed merchandise. There are Moo with the Sun tunics, I Got Judged by Grumble hoof pins, and a new board game called Pasture Panic. You catch him playing against himself and losing. Despite the chaos, you can't help but feel oddly proud. The temple rises, white stone catching the golden light, a symbol of celestial cow care if there ever was one. Still, peace is fragile. One evening, a stranger arrives. Tall, cloaked, carrying a staff carved with symbols you don't recognize. He doesn't speak. He just stands at the edge of the meadow, watching the cows. You approach cautiously. "Can I help you?" He points at the herd.